Three candidates who could become Baylor's next offensive coordinator. Let's do this. This is Locked On Baylor.
You are Locked On Baylor, your daily podcast on the Baylor Bears, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for joining another episode of Locked On Baylor, your team every day. Today's episode brought to you by Prize Picks. I'm your host, Cam Stewart, and we are into full-fledged OC search season. And by that, I mean it's been 3 days by the time you're listening, since Baylor has parted ways with Jeff Grimes, and they have already outlined the kind of OC they're looking for. But how attractive is this job? This is now going to be the third offensive coordinator in 5 years for Dave Aranda, entering season number 5. You know it's a sinking ship. You know one false move and the guy who brought you in is gone. It's a 1-year rental. It's an internship. At best, you get a head coaching job out of it. You do a good job. At worst, you are part of the group that gets canned at the end of the season, or worse yet, your head coach is fired in September and you're there with some schmo filling in, or maybe it's you filling in until the end of the season. So let's take a look at let's take a look at 3 offensive coordinator candidates based off Baylor's profile and what Baylor said they're looking for. Now, if you'll remember, that is someone with head coaching experience. Okay, so that's an important part of the criteria, because I don't think Baylor can attract that many great guys who have had a head coaching experience that are now offensive coordinators. Those guys tend to have their next job be head coaching again, not wallowing in the mire of coordinatorville. And the other criteria I'm going to put in here, the other non sequitur, I guess is the way to put it, is I am eliminating the names Dino Babers and Philip Montgomery. Now, Dino Babers actually fills the void perfectly in terms of coaches who have been a head coach at a good level, a successful offensive coordinator, head coach at a pretty big level in Syracuse and the ACC, and have just been canned and are desperate enough to take on this 1-year internship to just try and stay a relevant coach again. Philip Montgomery, very successful offensive coordinator as well at Baylor, like Dino Babers was, and not a very successful head coach at Tulsa. And the reason I am not putting those two in there is because they are both Art Briles guys. And I just don't think the university is going to touch that. Personally, I don't think so. So I'm just not even including them. So those are the criteria there. Without any further ado, number 1 and the sexiest name on this list, Ed Orgeron. Yes, Ed Orgeron. Need I say more? Successful coordinator, successful position coach on both sides of the ball, national champion head coach, and the defensive coordinator who got him there to that national championship in 2019, none other than Dave Aranda. And now this is where it could be kind of a favor situation. Ed Orgeron hasn't coached in college football since 2020. He seems to be living a pretty nice life. I don't think he's doing any analysis, really. He's not doing any punditry. He is just kind of hanging out. In fact, he's been around Baylor quite a few times because his son, Parker Orgeron, is on the staff here at Baylor. So there's another reason. Okay, we've already seen him on the practice sidelines at Baylor. We've seen him in the Baylor shirts. We've seen him at the Baylor games. Why not throw a bone to your old buddy, Dave Aranda, who desperately needs some help? And what more qualified candidate is out there that's a friend of Dave Aranda than Ed Orgeron? I know you don't really need me to go through his resume. I'm going to go through the resume of all 3 of these guys. But Ed fits the criteria of head coach. He's been head coach 3 times. Ole Miss, USC. Remember, he was the interim. It was 2013 when Lane Kiffin got fired, and they went 6-2 after that. And all the players wanted him to stay. AD didn't. He ends up becoming later the head coach at his kind of alma mater, LSU. So in that, 67-47 record, obviously the national championship in 2019. And the guys he's coached under in his decades of coaching, Jimmy Johnson and Pete Carroll, just to name two. And he also basically gave a start to Monty Kiffin's son, who you now know as Lane Kiffin, and gave the DC job when they were right about to win the national championship at LSU to Dave Aranda. Offensive guy, all in all, that's kind of his MO. But like I mentioned, he's coached on both sides of the ball. In fact, he was the D-line coach at the U under Jimmy Johnson, where he won 2 national championships there and coached 8 All-Americans. 8 in like 5 years. 8 All-Americans. Russell Maryland, number 1 pick in the draft. Cortez Kennedy, Warren Sapp. The last 2 in there have one thing in common. They're both in the Pro Football Hall of Fame, developed by Ed Orgeron. Also recruited a defensive lineman out of Florida by the name of Dwayne Johnson, who is the most famous of anybody on this list. Of course, you know him as The Rock. Super successful head coach, successful offensive guy, successful defensive guy. Part of the reason they want to bring in a head coach, and this is something I'm going to come back to a few times in these analyses, one of the reasons why they put in head coach is not necessarily someone to take Dave's job, not putting an interim in place per se, but more so a guy that can help take a little bit off his plate administratively, who knows how a good program is supposed to be run. Of course, his head coaching stints were up and down, wasn't all that successful at Ole Miss. His first crack at it, had a successful but brief stint at USC, and then the last year at LSU wasn't fantastic. But this guy put together and coached one of the great football teams of this century at 2019 LSU. And he's got the ties with Dave Aranda, and his son is there. Does it almost make too much sense? Like, this is a guy who doesn't have a ton to lose. Like, he already has a great, yet kind of complicated legacy as a football coach. And he's not someone who is just banking his career off this. He might never coach again, and it seems like he's okay with that, which not all coaches can do. Or he can help a brother out in Dave Aranda and step in and be the OC at Baylor. I think he'd be better than Larry Fedora. I'll put it that way. It's not all that likely just because of the pedigree he has, but so on paper, I should say it's not all that likely, but you look more into it and you think, why not? Why not? Bobby Petrino took another OC job and is working on another one incredibly at Arkansas. So why not Ed Orgeron? Does he fit Baylor? Do I care? I guess I should if I disqualify Dino Babers and Philip Montgomery. But look, I mean, so he takes pictures with ladies a lot. You could do a lot worse, man. Do a lot worse. And the guy can flat out coach. I mentioned the defensive players he coached. He also brought in Joe Burrow, who had one of the best, if not the best, college quarterback season in the history of the NCAA. He also overlapped with, was 1 year after Eli Manning. I think he overlapped 1 year with Eli Manning. So, I mean, he's coached some talented guys. Matt Barkley. Okay. He's been in the league 10 years. So it's something. Ed Orgeron. Do you think that is even possible? And how excited would you be for that? Drop that down in the comments below. That's just number one. We've got 2 more candidates coming up. But first, I can tell you about Prize Picks. Prize Picks is my favorite website to go to when it comes to daily fantasy sports, and that's why it's the number 1 daily fantasy sports platform in America. Now that you've got basketball season here, you can pick combo projections across both football and basketball from the Specials League. That's a league created specifically for these combo projections that has 2 or more players across 2 different sports. I gave the example yesterday of something, I don't remember, but today I'm going to use Jalen Hurts and Steph Curry for 9.5 touchdown passes plus 3-point combo. Easy money. And you get to watch two of the best players play and actually have an interest in it. So it's wicked fun. And you even have guys like Meek Mill who would agree with me on how fun it is because he plays it all the time. And you can see his picks in the community plays and the promos tab to view exactly what he's picking that week and go along with Meek Mill. And my favorite part about Prize Picks is it offers a reboot policy so that your entries stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. So for those football and those basketball games, if you have a player who exits the game in the first half and doesn't return in the second, that player is rebooted. So Prize Picks is the only daily fantasy sports platform with an injury insurance policy. You got the insurance policy. You got Meek Mill. It's the best time of year to do it in terms of sports. But if that isn't good enough for you, how about I give you this as the best reason to join right now? That is because you use the code LOCKEDONCollege. You go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnCollege. Use the code LOCKEDONCollege for a first deposit match up to $100. That's prizepicks.com/LockedOnCollege. Use the code LOCKEDONCollege, first deposit match up to $100. Prize Picks, daily fantasy sports made easy. Looking at candidate number 2, and it's not a sexy name, but if you put a gun to my head right now and said Cam Stewart, host of Locked On Baylor, your only daily sports podcast on Baylor athletics that isn't coming straight from the university, who do you think of these 3 guys you're going to name is going to be the offensive coordinator at Baylor? This next guy is the one. Jake Spavital. You can't have it all, but you can have Spavital. Jake Spavital, does he check off the head coach? Yes. Is it a glimmering record? No, not at all. He was the head coach at Texas State from 2019 to 2022, 13-35 record, including 0-2 against Baylor, by the way. Not good. It was actually kind of a disaster at Texas State. G.J. Kinney has really turned around that program. But again, other than Ed Orgeron, you're not going to get a dynamite head coach. You're not. You're not going to get guys who are some of the best coaches in the country, winning coach of the year. None of that. But he knows the administrative side of this thing. He knows what it takes to be a head coach. Okay, Dave Aranda is still your head coach. So you're not looking for 2 head coaches. You're looking for an offensive coordinator who knows kind of how this thing goes. So Jake Spavital might have the most impressive coaches and players that he is coached alongside or coached up of anyone on this list. And everywhere he goes, it's an offensive stop. And you might be saying, well, Cam, of course, it's an offensive coordinator. But Jeff Grimes is an offensive coordinator too. Wherever he goes, it's for defensive guys. And so he is always with these great defensive minds. Started as a GA at Houston back in 2009, okay, where he was coaching under Kevin Sumlin, who at one time was a great offensive mind, by the way. Not a terrific head coach, but a great offensive mind. And that was his best head coaching job was at UH. And OC Dana Holgorsen. And over his career, which has also landed at Oklahoma State, West Virginia twice, Cal twice, A&M. He's also now the current offensive coordinator at Cal, was just there for a year after leaving Texas State. And in that time, he has coached a top 20 offense in the nation 6 times. 6 times. A 7th that was between 20 and 25. But a top 20 offense 6 times. And what I like about him, what have you done for me recently, is he had a pretty good year at Cal this year. Cal as a program stinks. Just stinks. And nobody cares. They had a nice couple years under Sonny Dykes, in which he was also a coach under, we'll get to that. But Cal is not a great program, and they did not have a good football team in 2022. And so they've had this guy, Justin Wilcox, ever since Dykes left. So this is his 7th season. And in the first 6, they did not finish in the top 10 in the Pac-12 in points per game in any of those years. Any of them. This year they moved up to 7th, which is that earth-shattering? No. But to move that quickly in 1 year, to move up from 10 to 7 in what was a much better conference this year than last year, by the way, that's impressive. It actually really is. And just looking at the numbers and how they changed from 2022 to 2023, Cal went from 23 points a game to 32 points a game. A 9-point jump in 1 year. And all of this, by the way, was with a guy named Fernando Mendoza at quarterback. Numbers aren't great. I didn't even write them down. They're not great. But I mentioned that because he was a redshirt sophomore this year, and he was the only scholarship quarterback on the roster for Cal. The only one. So he's dealing with a bad offense that can't recruit offensive talent and that has one scholarship quarterback, no depth. And he's doing these numbers. So from 23 to 32. And by the way, Cal's defense also gave up 32 points a game. That's only one less than Baylor. So that's bad. That's a bad defense. And still, he's able to get his guys out on the field and compete in these games. And Cal, by the way, is a bowl team, which Baylor's not. 7-5 Cal, or 6-6 Cal. The Cal Golden Bears, better than the Baylor Bears this year in a better conference. Okay, so their yards per game also went up from 364 to 396. Again, 32-yard jump. That's pretty big. Here's the biggest one. So Spavital is big on tempo and passing. Okay, a diet air raid kind of offense. When you look at the place he's coached and the places the guys he's coached under, like Holgorsen, and coaching at UH and Oklahoma State and West Virginia, A&M, all of those places, and even that first stint at Cal under Sonny Dykes in 2016, all of those places he was running the air raid. And now he comes in here at Cal with no talent and no depth. And so what he does is he starts to be more balanced. It's still a spread attack. There's great up-tempo, all of the exciting stuff that you saw 10 years ago in the Briles offense. Are the numbers as good as that? No. But neither is the Briles offense these days. Go STCU. But they spread the field out. They have good tempo, and they do put up points. And looking at the rushing numbers, so not even necessarily Spavital's MO, but he goes in there and he says, this is going to give me the best chance to win at Cal this year, 2023. In 22, they were last in the Pac-12 in rushing yards per game at 97. That's even worse than Baylor this year, who couldn't run the football. Dead last in the conference. This year, they were 4th in the conference. 10-spot move to 4th in the conference at 181. They added 84 rush yards per game in one season. This is not easy. Cal was a rebuild. He did that in one season. And the coaches he's coached under, I've mentioned a few: Kevin Sumlin, Dana Holgorsen, Cliff Kingsbury, and Sonny Dykes. Again, offense everywhere he goes. He has learned from some of the very best in this business. He's gotten a shot at head coach. It didn't work out that well. He goes to a struggling program to be their OC, and he turns it around in 1 year. Like, he is the reason that they are bowl eligible. Their defense stinks, but he has made it work with the offense to get them there. Okay, how about the quarterbacks he's coached? Oh, boy. Oh, boy. Oh, boy. First place he went, Case Keenum, who threw for like 10 miles in college. One of the very best college quarterbacks based off numbers in the history of the sport. Okay? So that's his first stop. Second stop, Brandon Whedon at Oklahoma State. He was pretty good. If those kids of you out there don't remember, he was a cheat code with Justin Blackman out there at Oklahoma State when they should have won the national championship potentially in 2019. Okay, then he goes to A&M. Then he goes to West Virginia when Dana has the job at West Virginia. Coaches Geno Smith as the co-OC and quarterback coach. You guys remember that, 2012? Yes, that was the game Baylor scored 63 points and lost. 70-63. They lost to West Virginia. They were putting up stupid numbers with Geno. Stupid numbers. And that was under Jake Spavital. Then he goes to A&M. Coaches a guy by the name of Johnny Manziel. Quarterback coach. Cliff was the OC. He coaches Johnny Manziel to the Heisman Trophy. And then when Cliff leaves the next year, Spavital becomes the OC. And the next year, Manziel has better numbers than he does in his Heisman season. And then a guy he couldn't hang on to, but recruited and gave the start to Kyler Murray at A&M. Wears out his welcome there, goes to Cal. Davis Webb. Remember the old Tech quarterback, Davis Webb, who's still in the NFL, by the way? Yeah, he had a damn good year at Cal with Jake Spavital, where they were 10th in the nation in total offense. And then goes to West Virginia and has Will Grier. Guys, everywhere he goes, he has great offenses and successful quarterbacks. This guy has been around nothing but successful coaches, offensive coaches, and successful quarterbacks. This is a slam dunk. A slam dunk. The only issue here is Baylor might not be good enough to get him. Genuinely. It sucks to think like that Cal might be a better opportunity for him at this point in his career, but it might be. It's a place he's been out at for the second time, okay? He likes it there. But then again, on that flip side, he's like, look, man, I can come here with a kid like Sawyer Robertson. I've seen the big arm he has. I can go to Baylor, and if I just do my thing, I'm gonna be a head coach in 2025. If I get people to notice me at Baylor in Texas again, that's going to work. That's going to work. Or a high-profile offensive coordinator job could absolutely be in the run. So I don't know. He's at Houston the next year because that's where Cliff Kingsbury's going to go. Or he's with USC and Lincoln Riley or somewhere like that. Or Tech if Zach Kitley's worn out his welcome. Texas guy. This is the best candidate on today's list that still has a chance of going to Baylor. Don't overthink this. And do whatever you can to get Jake Spavital in the door. Everywhere he goes, he has success. He's had the best offensive minds of this generation around him, and he's had some of the actual best college quarterbacks of a generation around him. Bring him in. Blank check. Jake Spavital. I'm just getting so excited talking about Jake Spavital. And what really I should be telling you guys about is the way that Dave can get these guys in the door. And that's using LinkedIn Talent Solutions, the sponsor of today's video. It isn't just another job board, okay? It's got a vast network of more than a billion with a B, professionals, which makes it the best place to hire. It's easy when you have that many quality candidates. So easy, in fact, that 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Okay. They know that small businesses are wearing too many hats to worry about that kind of thing. They're going to handle it for you. Okay. It's intuitive, it's quick, and it's easy. They even launched a feature that helps you write the job descriptions, which makes that process even easier. You can post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions do apply. Okay, third and final name on the list. You guys are going to be like, who? This is going to be that Snoop Dogg meme. Who? Okay, so he's definitely not as big a name as Ed Orgeron. He's not even as big a name as Jake Spavital. But you notice, I put in the description on the rundown here if you're watching on YouTube, 2 national championship head coaches at the college level. 2 of them. Jake Spavital ain't one of them. That leaves, okay, what would be the wildest pick, Mark Whipple. You ever heard of Mark Whipple? If you're a football guy, you have. Okay, you got to be a pretty serious football sicko to know him. But he's had a ton of success at a couple of different levels. Okay, he's 66 years old. To put that into perspective, to get that out there. He has been doing this for over 40 years. He has been coaching. In fact, he coached in the original USFL in 1984 under George Allen, which is not bad. But his head coaching experiences are at his alma mater, Brown, the University of New Haven, and 2 stints at the University of Massachusetts. That's why I know him. Okay? But I mentioned there's a national title in there. Yes, In 1998, he won the FCS National Championship with UMass. National Championship. It's not the FBS, but hey, it's something. I mean, we lift up the Sam Houston guy and the James Madison guy and the couple of North Dakota State guys. It ain't easy to do that either. And if you can really remember far back, I'm talking 30 years from now or 30 years before now, his offense was voted Sports Illustrated's best offense in college football in 1993 while at the University of New Haven, where they put up over 51 points and 588 yards per game. Cam, that was 30 years ago. They didn't even know how to pass back then. What are you talking about? Look, the guy knows offense. And yes, it was 30 years ago that it was great, but it's been pretty good ever since. Okay, so he goes to UMass, wins the national championship in 98, stays there till 03, and then he goes to the NFL. He becomes the quarterback coach with the Pittsburgh Steelers. 2004 is his first season. It's also the first season of a young man named Ben Roethlisberger. So Mark Whipple is the one who introduces him to NFL football, gets him used to the league. We've seen great quarterbacks that start slow in their career. Some, actually nobody up until this guy, start 13-0 as a starter, like Ben Roethlisberger did. And in the second year, he becomes the youngest quarterback ever to win the Super Bowl, coached by Mark Whipple. That's a Hall of Famer. A Hall of Famer coached by Mark Whipple, brought into the NFL by Mark Whipple. So the players he's coached, Ben Roethlisberger, obviously. Brandon Weeden. Now, this was in the NFL, so not like Weeden at Oklahoma State, but was with the Cleveland Browns, where his numbers are actually better than I thought when I was looking back at them today, but obviously the teams weren't great. Donovan McNabb coached him as the quarterback's coach with the Eagles. And Kenny Pickett, first-round pick, Kenny Pickett, his quarterback coach at Pitt was Mark Whipple. Now, I should mention, Mark Whipple did get a second crack at UMass in the mid-2010s, and they were horrible. They were the worst team in Division I college football just before he came back and just after he came back, and they were only slightly better in the years that he was there. But that's a guy with 15 years of head coaching experience in college football. 15? And he's run some good offenses. That's not a bad pick if you end up with Mark Whipple. The last time he coached was in 2022, basically as one of these favor jobs to Scott Frost at Nebraska. Frost was fired by the end of the first month, and Whipple just kind of had to wait it out. But he is a guy who brings success with him everywhere he goes and brings damn good offenses with him everywhere he goes. It would be a weird pick just because he's going to be 67 by the time he's coaching his first game at Baylor. And it's not a sexy pick. Nobody's going to be, doing cartwheels about that one. But in terms of the Baylor criteria, and look, again, I think it's much more likely that they end up getting a guy who's an OC right now, which obviously Spavital is, but someone without head coaching experience, I think it's going to be a lot easier to lure those guys in. But by the Baylor criteria, those are three that either really could happen, or if they did happen, would not be the worst thing in the world. Mark Whipple, Ed Orgeron, Jake Spavital. It's just not easy for a school like Baylor, which I hate prefacing sentences like that, but a program like Baylor to lure a former head coach, because those guys want to be head coaches again. They don't want a one-year internship. When you are looking for those coordinators to become your head coach, yeah, that's fairly easy. And I've got a list of guys who I think could still stand a chance at taking the Baylor job as the OC that are OCs right now. That's a list for a different day. Those are the three guys in my mind who had been head coaches in the past and were not Art Briles disciples, and therefore fits the mold of the guy Baylor is looking for. Did I totally fudge this one up? Or were you nodding your head along to the lyrics a little bit? Let me know down in the comments. Be sure to like and subscribe. We are bringing you daily Baylor content at least 5 days a week. At this rate, there's going to be 10 or 12 videos in a 7-day span because of all that's going on. But you guys are also supporting it. So I really appreciate that. Like and subscribe. Drop a comment down there. That really helps the algorithm. And let me know who you think would be Baylor's next offensive coordinator. And who knows? Maybe I messed one up and I forgot one, or you have a better point than I do. That happens a lot. And we'll highlight that in the next show. Thank you. This is Locked On Baylor.